Hey, what's up YouTube? This is Barnon11970, and as always, I thank you guys for viewing my channel. That's good. I put the window open so I can get extra light, and it seems to have made me look even darker. Go figure. Anyway, I'm going to make another quick little video to show you guys a proper perspective of the obvious, blatantly obvious price manipulation they've done as far as it goes with the physical gold and silver. And you get to see how easily they suppress the prices and how easy it is to spot it when you pay attention. And I'm going to use some prior examples of showing that supply and demand does not dictate price going down when the demand is going up. Now, some of you may not be old enough to remember this, but I'll do two examples, one semi-current, one back in the 80s. Let's look at two examples. Let's look at, for example, Cabbage Patch dolls, and let's use, for example, the Tickle Me Elmo dolls. Just use those. See, there's plenty of other things we can use, but let's just use those two examples. If you remember back in the 80s, when the Cabbage Patch craze came out, everybody and their grandmother wanted one for their children. Excuse me. Matter of fact, there were people selling them for thousands of dollars. These were dolls that cost, I think, about $39.99. And you couldn't get them, couldn't find them anywhere. People were fighting each other. I remember an article where somebody said they were threatening to turn one into coleslaw. Now, can anybody remember, as that demand for those dolls got higher and higher and more people wanted them, anybody remember any store selling them at a discounted price? I sure don't. Let's do the more recent one, only a couple of years ago, the Tickle Me Elmo. Which, by the way, the funny part is, at the time I was dating this girl, we went to a toy store, and I saw one of those Tickle Me Elmos before it became popular, and I picked the stupid thing up, and there were like 3 of them on the shelf, and I picked it up and started shaking, and I started making fun of it. It's like, oh, great, a doll that has epileptic seizures. Little did I know, because probably about 2 or 3 weeks later, all of a sudden, everybody wanted one of these things. And again, you could see in the newspaper, $1,000, $1,500, $2,000. You couldn't find them. Everybody wanted them. You think anybody was publicizing in the article a Tickle Me Elmo for $40? You don't see that, because it shows in supply and demand. Now, whether there is a depleted amount of silver, that's irrelevant. I don't believe that silver is scarce or non-existent, because people are hoarding it. So it's going somewhere. It's not like it's disappearing. But as we use it, it gets less and less. Now, this isn't going to be something overnight, so let's keep this in perspective. But the thing is, so many new people are getting in that it's very difficult for the suppliers to keep up with the current demand. And yet, we see the prices lowered for the past 2 weeks. All of a sudden, it's rising now. And I think really the only reason it's rising now is because it's becoming so blatantly obvious that now that the mainstream media is starting to talk about it, it would be ridiculous when the average person out there could suddenly see it and say, wait a minute, everybody wants it, but yet why is the price going down? That just doesn't make sense. When something is in high demand and it's very hard to get, people have to pay through the nose for it. I mean, just remember when the Xbox game first came out. I remember you could not get an Xbox. I think it started out at $199.99. And you couldn't find them anywhere. People were selling them for $1,000. I remember going to a comic book store one day in the mall, just browsing through because I was waiting for my girlfriend at the time, and I was just killing time. And all of a sudden found out that that comic store was actually selling the Xbox. No one knew about it because you don't think of a comic book store as a place to find those kind of things. So I ended up buying one. And as I'm leaving and putting it in my car, I realized, wait a minute. People were trying to spend $1,000 for these things. I went back in that store and bought 2 more. I turned around and sold them, gave them away at $800 a piece. And as soon as people found out I was selling them for $800 a piece, I had like 20 different offers. My Xbox was free. I got $1,600 for the other 2. You didn't see anybody selling the Xbox for $200 outside of the stores. because you couldn't get them anywhere else. So my thing is, when it comes to the physical gold and silver market, you have to understand that approximately 1% of the world collects gold and silver bullion as an investment. 1% of the world. 1%, or even less than 1%, of over 7 billion people. So it's irrelevant how much silver there is, because there isn't an infinite amount. So let's keep that in perspective. It's not an element that just gets created out of thin air. So it will have its time. But if all of a sudden, like I've said in previous videos, what if 3%, 5%, 10% of the public start getting into it? What if 50% of the world all of a sudden saw that silver and gold is the only thing that will save them and everybody's trying to get it? Let's think about that day. This is only 1% or less of the people. It's pretty obvious at this point. If you don't see it, then you obviously don't see it, and there's nothing I can do for you. This is something, like I've said, long term. The more people get on this bandwagon, and the more people tell their friends, and then the more people see, wow, they're doing something, I better follow them. Well, then all of a sudden you're going to see those prices even rise even further. And we could have an event that happened with the Bitcoins. So, I make no guarantees about this. I'm just putting in my 2 cents. I use examples so people can kind of put things in proper perspective. Excuse me. But remember, guys, you ultimately are in charge of what you do and don't do. So, if you don't think this is something that's being manipulated, you have every right to believe that. If you're one of those people that doesn't want to listen to anything other than what you believe in, well, that's an interesting way to go. I'm just giving my point of view. You could like it. Thumbs up if you do. If you don't like it, hey, give the thumbs down. That's what we got to do. So to everybody out there, whether you enjoy what I do or not enjoy what I do, thanks for watching. Have a good day. Peace.